Sal Capaccio joining us on the Western Hotline. He did his yearly conversation on the NFL schedule. Sal, it's that time of year. We're about a month away from the release of the schedule. So
a tradition unlike any other.
Yes. Your contact, your buddy Mike North. Tell us, first off, how did this all come to pass that you were able to do this every year with Mike North?
It's a great question. Years ago, I'd say maybe a good 6-7 years ago, I've been talking with Mike now for a while. Actually, Buffalo Bills PR director Derek Boyko actually hooked me up with Mike for a couple questions I had about the schedule. He said, it's a good question for Mike. So I did. And then Mike's like, hey, if you ever want to talk about it, I'm more than willing to. And that's great. Let's do something on the air. And it kind of formulated from there, to be quite honest with you. So really just kind of grew out of that. And I'm a real, as you guys know, kind of a schedule geek, schedule nerd. I love that kind of stuff and putting the puzzle together. So it kind of really just became bigger and bigger. And once I realized how much of an appetite there was for it out there from fans, we decided to make it, even larger. So years ago, before I was doing the podcast with Matt Bove, it was just me and Mike. And, we went for over an hour at a time or whatever. And then now, the last 3 years now, Matt's been on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo. And Matt would always tell me, oh, my God, I love that pod you do. I want to be a part of it. Can we make it into this show? So we've done that. And this year, just like the last few years, it's gone for an hour and a half of a conversation with Mike North. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. So as we get to it, we're about a month away. Your conversations with Mike, when do they start to piece it together? How much of it is it like a draft board, Sal, where there's, hey, let's get everybody together, we'll start to talk about it? Does it take months to get this thing from start to finish?
Yeah, it does. But nowadays it's way different, guys. It's computer generated, really, and they put in a lot of different kinds of things that they need to put in, and you tell the computer what you're looking for in some instances, and the computer just generates thousands and thousands and thousands of schedules, and then one of them eventually becomes the schedule. And he said, they have no idea what the final schedule is right now. None. There's lots of things still up in the air, many things up in the air, the whole schedule essentially, and then at some point, it spits one out, and they go to the commissioner, and he has the final approval. And he says, yep, I like that one, and they run with it. And we're not looking at that until, as you just said, about a month from now. He said probably the second week in May. Could it be a little bit earlier? Sure, it's possible, because it could spit something out where they go, we all think we like this. Let's do it. But they go through thousands and thousands of schedules. The computer does that, and then it spits something out, and they look at it and say, okay, this is the one we're going to roll with, after they tell it kind of where they want to play certain games and do certain things with certain teams.
Yeah, and that's especially, I'm thinking about international games and stuff like that, Sal, where they would surely know how often teams have played in those, and how much did you get into that when it comes to the international circuit, especially for the NFL, and where the Bills kind of play into that?
Okay, so big questions this year, obviously, with the Bills and international. We've had some rumors that the Bills could be playing in Ireland against the Steelers. So
right.
The Steelers are the host team in Ireland. We've talked about that. The Bills are at the Steelers this year. There's been a theory that Matt even put this theory to Mike North. Matt's theory is, okay, if Aaron Rodgers signs with the Steelers, there's no way. Because let's backtrack here for a second. Mm-hmm. A lot of the reporting early on was Packers-Steelers. It wasn't set, but a lot of people said, they're hearing Packers are going to be Steelers in Ireland. Well, what if Aaron Rodgers signs with the Steelers? Are you really putting that game on at 9:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning against the Packers? Aaron Rodgers against his former team? It just can't live there, right? You've got to put it somewhere else. So that would get you to, okay, who's another possibility? It would be the Bills. And he ran that theory by Mike. And sure, Mike's not going to dismiss that. He doesn't know who's playing there right now. He really doesn't. But he also said, yeah, that's certainly possible. But everything's on the table, including, which I learned, even division games. And if you look at it, guys, think about this for a second. There are actually, of the 7 international games, we know there are 7 international games this year. We know all of the home teams. We do not know any of the away teams. Out of the 7 international games this year, the Bills actually could be the opponent in 4 of them. And I was dismissing, like everybody else, they're not going to play the Dolphins internationally. They're not going to play the Jets internationally. They're not going to put division games there. Mike said, no, we've put division games there. That could definitely happen. And with the growth of these international games, you might see more of those down the road. Now, I still think it's unlikely, but let's just remember, it's not just the Steelers. There's a 4 out of 7 game chance that the Bills could be one of those opponents playing an international game. You have the Dolphins in Spain, you have the Steelers in Ireland, you have the Jets in London, and you have the Browns in London. The Bills are the opponents going to those teams and all those different situations.
How do you feel about real quick? I've not thought. I heard you talk about the Steelers and the Bills and Dublin as a potential. I agree with you that like Rodgers playing against the Packers again just does not feel like what you'd want to do there. The Bills losing a road game against Miami, you would think good, right? Because it's not another road division game, but that is a trip that Bills fans love to make, and it's not like Miami is the most hostile division, opponent. The Bills often take that stadium over, at least, a chunk of it.
That's a good point, Joe. I would say, let me put it this way. I think Bills fans might be more upset about losing a road game in Miami than Miami Dolphins fans about losing a home game to the Buffalo Bills, right? Because of what you just said, which is true. Now, the way it works is, and I want to be clear, you're not picking your opponent. Like, they're not going to Miami and saying, do you want the Bills, yes or no? You have final say here. Who do you want? But what they do, Mike North said, is they will go to each team and say, okay, you are hosting this year. Dolphins, you're hosting in Spain. Here are all the 8 possibilities you could have. Give us your thoughts on any games you say you cannot put that game in Spain. Or, you know what, we're okay with these opponents. It doesn't mean we're going to adhere completely to what you say, but we will weigh it in consideration when we do this.
All right. Sal Capaccio joining us on the Western Hotline talking about his scheduled podcast with Mike North. Sal, you say an hour and a half, like all the things we talk about. I remember, what was it for? Was it Brady and New England where you kind of learned that kind of matchup they would aim for early in the season? They would lean that way. So like that strikes me as if Rodgers is going to play against the Packers or I remember Russell Wilson against the Broncos was a season opener, right? That was So
week 1.
Those kind of it's about one person that tends to skew early. It would seem.
That's a good point. We did not ask him specifically, and I would have. This was on my notes to ask him, but we went so long I didn't want to keep going and take up his time. I was going to ask him that about Stephon Diggs. Does he move the meter for the Patriots against the Bills, right? Would that be something? But in that instance, you have 2 different games. You could play that early and late, right? So you could schedule one of those early because you want to make sure you get Stephon against the Bills. He's coming off an injury. But what if he doesn't play early in the season because of the injury, right? Are you looking at that? It's also a division game. You could kind of fit that anywhere. It's a good point you make, Jeremy. Now, I will say, the Steelers game in Dublin is, I believe, going to be within the first 4 weeks of the season. We know that, first 4 or 5 anyway. So if you are thinking Rodgers, Packers, former team early, it does fit. It's just I don't know if the window fits where they want to put it. But speaking of windows, Bills related. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's early or late. I specifically said, and we put out a clip yesterday, you can find it on social, I specifically asked Mike North, has Josh Allen, even though he was already having this major impact on where you put the Bills, prime time, all these different games, and we could talk about holidays, by the way, as well. Like, now he's on the cover of Madden last year. He now has league MVP attached to his name and his resume. And, oh, by the way, he's marrying a superstar actress. Does that elevate him even more in the eyes of the schedule makers? His word, undoubtedly. So there you go. Like, the Bills are, and it doesn't have to be prime time. Let's remember, 4:25 p.m. windows are considered national television, huge number windows, market-wise, viewer-wise, I should say, for the NFL. So I'm just telling you, like, expect, again, very few 1 p.m. games this year.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. Like, you kind of just said it, but from talking to Mike North over the years and for this podcast that came out this morning, 4:25, are we at a point where it's valued almost the exact equivalent of what a primetime game is? That the league and the broadcast partners might treat it that way, because even though there are, there's always a Broncos game, I feel like, that's on at 4:25, but 95% of people are usually watching the big game in that window.
Yeah, of course, you're going to get your West Coast teams. They're going to play in that window, 4:05, 4:25. The 4:25 game is a little more reserved for the national window. 4:05 usually isn't. You're going to get your West Coast teams, but you're going to save those big teams, those East Coast games, those East Coast teams for playing in that window. Think about the Bills playing the Chiefs the last few years. Now, remember, several years ago, the Bills and Chiefs would play a Sunday night game or a Monday night game. Now, the last 3 years, guys, it's been CBS 4:25 p.m. And judging by what Mike North said, I mean, like, they are drawing some of their biggest numbers of any game in the whole season, putting it there. So if you're CBS, you are clamoring for, we want to keep that. Now, they don't have full say over it. That's on the league, but the league understands that number is monstrous for them, for CBS, for everybody to put it in that window. So it feels like that might happen again. Remember 2 years ago, Bills-Eagles overtime game. He referenced that game and how monstrous that number was for the Bills and the Eagles to play in Philadelphia when that happened. You're right. It doesn't have to be primetime. These games, they are played at 4:25. Bills played the Cowboys there a couple years ago at home, as you guys know. Those are really massive windows that they like to take advantage of, and the Bills are a very big candidate to be a part of that again this year.
Sal Capaccio on the Western Hotline. Did he talk about it all, as we're talking about your podcast with Mike North, which you can find in all the places? Where is it, Sal? Your YouTube page?
At Sal Sports on YouTube is the visual. It's the visual, and we have some graphics, and we throw it up, and people can see all of that, and you can see Mike. Mike was in his office last 3 years. 3 years ago, Mike was literally in his car as his kids practiced soccer. Last year, he was sitting at his living room table. This year, he's in his NFL offices, and people joke that he looked like he was in jail because he's wearing like an orange shirt or something in a smaller office. So you never know where Mike's going to pop up, but we appreciate his time. And then obviously wherever you pod on the audio side, that could be iTunes, Spotify, and of course the Odyssey app.
Did you ask him all the pictures of follow-throughs on golfing on the side? Is it him?
I did.
It looks like he's got a series of pictures of himself
golfing,
hitting golf shots. I don't know if it's him or not.
I think he likes to play golf. Yeah, for sure. So okay. I did not ask him any of that. What I don't know. Whatever else you guys want to get into is great. We touched on a lot, but holidays. Boy, look. This is what we're doing now. We're playing a lot of holidays. There's going to be 3 Christmas games this year, and we know that 2 are on Netflix, 1's on Amazon. And one of the reasons why is because it is a Thursday night. It's normal. It's Amazon's night anyway, right? Amazon Prime on a Thursday night. They are not going to do. They don't need to do this year what they did last year. He said, which is the 4 teams playing on Saturday also play on Thursday because that was a quick turnaround with a Wednesday. This year it'll be treated like a Thursday, like a Thanksgiving, basically, right? With those teams on a Thursday, it could be anybody. I'll just again say, and again, I know people probably don't believe this. They may have an idea. They really don't know. They don't have the schedule, so he's not going to tell us if it is the case anyway. But just judging from everything we talked with Mike yesterday, and you can listen and judge for yourself, I just have a real feeling the Bills are going to be on one of these holidays, whether it's Christmas or Black Friday, and 6 teams will be playing on Christmas. It just makes a lot of sense. It could be them.
The thing I was going to get to, Sal, is he's been doing this for how many years?
About over 2 decades, I think now.
The question I was going to get to, does he let on that it's more interesting, more fun, more complicated, more stressful, more tedious with how many? Because as a viewer, I feel like a lot of us are thinking, okay, where's the game tonight? Is it? It's Netflix, it's Amazon, it's this, it's that, it's Peacock. Does that add challenges? Because now they have so many partners to deal with. It used to be 2 to 3, and now what are they at? Like 8?
Yeah, Jeremy, it's a great question, and I don't know if he would use. I don't know if you've ever asked if any specific word like that, but the challenge is right because of what you said, which is they want to take care of their TV partners, right? They do, but they also know that there's so many ways to do that, and they have these multi-year agreements where it doesn't have to be this year, and it could be next year. And yeah, sure, CBS wants every great game, and so does NBC, and so does Amazon Prime. They have to think about all those things. These are partners that are paying a lot of money for these entities, and assets, I think is what they call them. And, yes, there are a lot of challenges that come along with that. I asked him to share a story. It's a good story. You can listen. I won't share the whole thing. I said, give me a story about a team that was mad about their schedule. And he shared a good story about Steve Spagnuolo and calling him one time when he was the head coach of the St. Louis Rams, and how the conversation went that he was upset at the schedule after it came out, right? Like you have to think about everything here. And he said though that made him what Spagnuolo said about how they formulated their schedule that year actually did have them kind of reevaluate a little bit of, and you'll understand why. And they have another person in their department now who not just looks at, a lot of times you're looking at rest and buys and where that falls. Of where the schedule falls because of a lot of different things. So there's a lot of different complicated issues here.
Sal Capaccio with us on the Western Hotline. Did you get into it all, Sal? If it being the final year at the stadium matters at all to the schedule, and I think especially when the thought be about who the final game would be, the final regular season game would be.
We did, Joe. And as you can imagine, they're going to have it in the back of their mind, but there's no way to predict who the actual game is against if the Bills make the playoffs, right? So all they could do is think about maybe the regular season. And on top of that, you're already playing a division game week 18. So if it's a home game, it's going to be one of three teams. We know that. It's either the Jets, the Patriots, or the Dolphins. There's no guarantee it's going to be week 18. It could be week 17. He said that they'll have that in mind, but they're not going to make the schedule around it. Because there's just so many unpredictables as far as how the season ends and all those kinds of things. It's really the new stadiums that they do think a little bit more about that than the old stadiums and closing it out. So as much as we here in Buffalo will very much pay attention to, okay, the final regular season game in that stadium is blank. This is not 2009 or 2010 anymore. The Bills are most likely playing home games. So whichever team that is, knock on wood, we're expecting more games to be played in that stadium beyond that, and no one can predict that.
Right. I'm wondering, this is less a Mike North question, this would be more a question for the Bills even, is like they'll because like you said, you can't really predict what you're doing for when the final game will be. They might even play a playoff game at home on like a Saturday and not know if the next week is going to be at home or not. Like you might not know if that's the final one until like Monday. So I wonder if a lot of the festivities that the Bills do will be, in that final regular season game. Like they'll almost kind of treat that like the last game, even though they'll know, they'll probably know that they're going to have a home.
I actually think, Joe, judging by my conversation with Pete Gwelly at the owners' meetings, I don't think it's going to be like necessarily. Now that you're implying everything would be done like this, I don't think it'd be saved for the final game. I think it's going to be a season of this.
The whole season?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think your season is going to be about the last game. It's not going to be we're all culminating to this one final game and we're going to send this stadium out. I think every game you're going to get a little bit and a little taste of that.
All right. Sal Capaccio. Sal, before we wrap up, you were at the topping out ceremony on Friday of last week, and we haven't talked to you since then, so I just wonder if you might be off for a thought as things keep moving forward.
I have a couple thoughts. I think I joined you guys the morning of before it happened, and I just want to reiterate what I said then, which is for people who grew up here and being told for decades as we were little kids that the Bills would not be here long term because the NFL doesn't put teams in Buffalo, and once their stadiums run their course, they're going to leave, and there's so much money to be made in other markets. Like, to have that moment, to have that day, guys, meant a lot. It really did. And I don't mean to sound cheesy or corny or anything like that, but the Bills matter to us here a lot, and to all of us, and for all different reasons in all different ways. And we can have our talks and our debates and our discussions about costs of stadium and who's paying, and I get all that, I do. But I'm just talking about having a football team here. I'm talking about what this team means to this area, and for 10 and 15-year-old Sal Capaccio and so many people like me out there to see this happening last week, it's pretty amazing because we never thought that would happen. We were told it would never happen. We were told that if it happened, it'd be in another city. And that was just pretty much my lifetime, to be honest with you, growing up. And I think that's awesome. And the second part of it is the physical aspect of watching it. I mean, I've never been a part of anything like that. I've never seen something like that. It was amazing. It was cool. I actually went to the ball drop one time in New York City, and it comes down and you celebrate. It's the opposite. It goes up and then you celebrate when it goes in. And it's like that. It's very cool. The people that were there to be a part of it, to see all those construction workers and wearing all their bright colors and their hard hats and them celebrating their accomplishment and what they have overseen. I mean, just a really, really, really cool scene. I'm glad that we're here to have this. I'm glad for generations. Jeremy, for your kids, for my son, for anybody out there who has kids that are going to enjoy going to games and other events at this stadium, to know that is there. It's a part of our way of life that we maybe never thought we would get to, and it finally is here, and I think that's awesome.
And you guys might have talked about this while I was off, but Pete Gwelly talking about like a kickoff event at the stadium before a Bills game is going to be, I think, a lot of fun to play around with. I mean, my mind went right to concert, but I think I heard you at some point last week, Sal, talk about like maybe soccer or lacrosse or something too.
I think concert is a very, very big, it could be both. I don't think you're going to have necessarily one.
Right.
You're probably going to have a few events leading up. I think the challenge, Joe, is with a concert, like, what does that do to the field, right? I mean, how does that look? You're trying to, you guys talked yesterday with John Polka. He's talking about the grass that's being grown.
Yeah.
It's going to be put in. This is not natural. This is not turf. This is natural grass, right? How do you do an event to make sure that you keep everything, in the best shape possible to also open up an NFL football season?
Right. Because, that's interesting. Because if you when do you want to kind of roll that out? Test it. Because they will have concerts, right? They will have concerts at that stadium. Yeah. Do you want to do that right away and maybe get it out of the way? It's like, okay, this is also practice for how does the field recover after? Or, like to your point, would they rather just push that off until after the season? Let's get a season in before we start messing around with, ripping up the grass that we've been growing for 2 years in New Jersey or wherever it is.
I think that's part of it too. Excuse me. I think that one of the things you want to do is you also want to get your fans familiar with the stadium, right? Now, I don't know what plans they have, but I would imagine at some point, if you're a season ticket holder, like you're going to want to have people in there to kind of get the layout and the feel of what the stadium is, to get into an event, kind of see it, understand where your seats are. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think you want necessarily everybody just going in the first ever football game and going, where the heck do I go? You're talking to and all these ushers and people around are trying to point you in the right directions. I think you want to have the ability to at least give people a little bit of familiarity with it as well.
All right. Thank you, Sal.
You got it, guys.
Sal Capaccio. You can, again, catch his podcast with Mike North, he and Matt Bove on the Sal Sports YouTube page and wherever you get your podcasts as well.